What's unfolding in Diddy's case is far more terrifying than most people realize. This story doesn't end with him, it climbs straight to the very top of the power pyramid. And what was recently discussed on a major podcast may have been something that was never meant to be said out loud. In this video, we're exposing the entire power structure, from Diddy to the untouchable names at the top. You'll discover who the real players are, why certain figures are never questioned no matter what, and why one public conversation may have crossed a dangerous line. While Diddy sits in a prison cell awaiting trial, many assume the damage stops there. That assumption couldn't be more wrong. A recent podcast discussion revealed something deeply unsettling, connections so vast and powerful they reach into every corner of influence in this country. This network goes far beyond headlines and scandals. It's a system built on silence, protection, and control. And once you see how it all connects, you'll understand why this story is making people nervous. Trust me, this will completely change how you see everything.
He's going to be in jail for the rest of his life. I think he's probably going to get
Think he's
beat up.
insane, though?
I don't know. I don't even think it matters. I mean, a lot of it is...
But then it's just another Epstein. It's another Ghislaine Maxwell, where somebody gets indicted
cases.
and nobody else. Indicted for trafficking kids to...
Right,
no.
To no one.
Right.
What is the next crazy thing that's going to explode in the news? Is Bill Clinton's going to have an OnlyFans? Like, what is going to happen? What is the next thing that's going to make us all go, what the f***? Like, what the f*** is going on?
It's coming. You know.
How many guys were on video saying, ain't no party like a Diddy party? How many people like openly talked about being there?
LeBron?
Yeah, how about Ashton Kutcher? All these people. Like, you guys all went, you didn't see nothing.
Before we get into who's really pulling the strings, you have to understand what Diddy is actually accused of, because without that context, none of what follows will make sense. Right now, Diddy is sitting in jail facing serious federal charges. Prosecutors allege that he used his wealth, influence, and power to coerce victims into horrific situations, and this is where the story takes a disturbing turn. The so-called freak-offs, these were allegedly private parties where celebrities were drugged and secretly recorded without their knowledge. Imagine thinking you're attending a party only to later realize everything was being filmed, possibly to be used as leverage. More than 120 people have come forward with allegations. Even more disturbing, 25 of them were minors. That's the reality being discussed here. 50 Cent's recent Netflix documentary, The Reckoning, brought renewed attention to the case he didn't shy away from exposing the allegations, and for many viewers it was a wake-up call. But what most people don't realize, and this is where everything shifts, is that Diddy wasn't operating alone, and he definitely wasn't at the top. That brings us to Joe Rogan. During one of his podcast episodes, Rogan began connecting dots that most people won't even touch. He brought up Jeffrey Epstein, and suddenly the parallels became impossible to ignore. The conversation turned serious fast. One guest asked the question everyone was thinking: is he going to talk, as in will he expose everyone else involved? That's when Rogan pointed out a pattern that should make anyone uncomfortable: the Epstein pattern. One person gets charged with trafficking, but somehow no one else ever goes down with them. Epstein trafficked Minorsto, who exactly? According to official records, no one. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of trafficking to who? Again, no one. That doesn't add up. The pattern is clear. The people at the very top always find a way out. It's the same story replayed over and over, yet most people act like they don't see it. Then Rogan started naming names: LeBron James, Ashton Kutcher, other major celebrities who openly talked about attending Diddy's parties back in the day. Remember all those ain't no party like a Diddy party clips? Rogan asked the question no one wants to answer. You all went and you saw nothing, and that silence is telling. Either they knew what was happening or they were closer to it than anyone wants to admit. There isn't much room in between. Now we get to the real power. If Diddy was the king of his domain, then Lucian Grange is the emperor operating behind the curtain. Grange is the CEO of Universal Music Group, the parent company connected to nearly every major label Diddy worked with. His influence is enormous, far beyond what most people realize. Here's where things get unsettling. In the Little Rod lawsuit, Grange's name was reportedly mentioned. The allegation that major labels don't just distribute music, they provide the infrastructure that allows powerful figures to operate with protection, not just corporations but systems that shield influence. And when those court documents surfaced, the implications were hard to ignore.
These words would come out my mouth, but Candace Owens is on to something, and that did not feel comfortable at all. So Candace says the reason mainstream news is not picking up this lawsuit, is not paying attention to Diddy at all, is because of this man right here, Lucian Grange. He is one of the most powerful men in Hollywood and music, and he been up in Diddy's room. So this man right here is Sir Lucian Charles Grange. He's been the CEO of Universal Music Group since 2010, so you know he done seen some shit. So I had to go to the damn documents. I had to see if this man was actually named, and he is. As you can see, it says Lucian Charles Grange, and it also says Universal Music Group. On top of that, it says Ethiopia. I cannot fuck up her last name, I refuse to. But she was also a big person in Universal Music Group. And then Christina Coramham, Lord forgive, but she was like Diddy's second hand.
According to the lawsuit, Grange didn't merely have knowledge of the parties allegedly sponsored them. The filing claims he attended multiple gatherings at Diddy's Los Angeles home events where explicit workers were present and alarmingly underage girls were allegedly in attendance. That detail alone changes the weight of the accusations. The lawsuit further alleges that Grange either knew or should have known that attendees were being drugged. The claim centers on alcohol, specifically bottles of De Leon tequila and Ciroc vodka brands directly tied to Diddy, which were allegedly laced and used to incapacitate people without their awareness. If true, the implications are staggering. Candace Owens publicly questioned why mainstream media outlets avoided the story altogether. She argued that Lucian Grange's immense influence in Hollywood and the music industry plays a role as one of the most powerful executives in entertainment. She suggested he holds significant sway over what receives coverage and what quietly disappears. The lawsuit doesn't stop with Grange. It names other Universal Music Group figures as well, including Ethiopia Habtemariam and Christina Koram, alleging they were aware of what was happening. According to the filing, these individuals allegedly witnessed the environment firsthand, yet took no action to stop it. The claim being made is blunt: major label executives control the money, and with that control comes the power to decide which problems get addressed and which are protected. When billions of dollars are involved, the lawsuit suggests accountability becomes optional. That, critics argue, is why the story hasn't dominated coverage on major networks. Those at the top don't just influence industries, they influence narratives. And when discussions turn to Diddy's closest inner circle, one name consistently resurfaces: Jay-Z. Their relationship is portrayed as far deeper than friendship. Diddy once said that only two people in the world are allowed to call him by his real name: Sean, his mother, and Jay-Z, no one else.
One person.
Oh, go on.
And I call him Sean. That's Jay-Z. We call each other Sean.
Okay.
Yeah. Nobody else could call me Sean.
He's the only person who's Sean approved.
There's not a single person that
outside of family.
That should be outside of my mother.
Okay, just
that should be calling me. Yeah, they should be calling me.
Now, Jag, you are right if you're unfamiliar with her. She's known for saying out loud what many in the industry avoid. She appeared in an interview with Piers Morgan where she made striking allegations involving both Jay-Z and Diddy. What drew immediate attention afterward, however, was her claim that the full episode became extremely difficult to find, quickly disappearing from public circulation. To many observers, that raised an obvious question: if there was nothing sensitive in the conversation, why did it vanish so fast? During that interview, Wright raised a point that has lingered for years. She questioned how Jay-Z could appear on major platforms, including a high-profile sit-down with Gayle King, without ever being asked about long-standing rumors or controversial industry relationships. She didn't soften her language, openly accusing both Diddy and Jay-Z of abusing power and exerting influence in ways she believes have harmed the industry for decades. Her remarks reignited another question that many found difficult to ignore: why would Jay-Z's personal high-profile attorney reportedly become involved in matters connected to Diddy's legal situation? Critics debated whether this was coincidence, professional overlap, or a sign of deeper connections operating behind closed doors. Jay-Z has never publicly responded to these claims or addressed the broader speculation. In today's media climate, some interpret silence not as neutrality but as a deliberate choice, especially when powerful figures have the means to shape narratives rather than confront them directly. Joe Rogan has discussed this dynamic repeatedly on his podcast. His argument is that high-level elites rarely deal with controversies on their own. Instead, they rely on elite legal teams and crisis managers whose job is to contain damage, redirect attention, or make stories disappear altogether. Names like Alan Grubman often surface in those discussions, attorneys who represent some of the biggest figures in entertainment, from Diddy to Bruce Springsteen. These lawyers, Rogan suggests, don't just defend clients, they connect the industry's most powerful players, drafting NDAs and agreements that can keep stories buried for decades. In this framework, information becomes the ultimate currency. Those who control it decide which narratives survive and which never see daylight. Rogan has also drawn comparisons during conversations with former CIA officer Mike Baker, pointing to alleged similarities between Diddy's so-called freak-offs and the Jeffrey Epstein operation. The theory discussed is not that Diddy acted alone or masterminded everything himself, but that he may have functioned as a facilitator within a much larger system. If recordings were made at these gatherings, as federal indictments have alleged, the lingering question becomes: who were they for? Who stood to benefit from that material? In this theory, the most powerful individuals are not the visible figures in headlines, but unnamed players in the background: corporate leaders, politicians, and global elites whose identities remain hidden while others take the fall.
Epstein, it's good. There's probably several thousand hours of footage here.
Yeah. And I should say, I think you voted for it.
I'd like to see a matchup of those, we call it the top 100 puppet masters in the Epstein client list.
Do you think there's some overlap?
Strong overlap.
When are we going to see that list, do you think?
I don't know.
Will that ever come out, do you think?
You know, I think part of why Kamala is getting so much support is that if Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public.
Yes.
And some of those billionaires behind Kamala are terrified of that outcome.
Yeah. Do you think Reid Hoffman's uncomfortable?
Yes. And Gates.
and Gates. And I only ask that because you can sort of just look at them and you're like, that's a nervous person right there. I don't know. I mean, I assume you know them. Yeah.
There are also claims circulating that the footage involved goes far beyond Diddy's parties alone. According to some accounts, there may be thousands of hours of recordings with alleged links extending even to material connected to Jeffrey Epstein. If true, critics argue this wouldn't be isolated misconduct, but something far larger, an alleged blackmail ecosystem operating quietly for decades. This idea has been hinted at, not confirmed in public conversations during an appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. Elon Musk alluded to the possibility that fear not loyalty may explain why certain political figures receive overwhelming support from wealthy donors. His suggestion was that some powerful individuals may worry about what could surface if the wrong people gain influence. Lists names and associations that were never meant to be public. In that discussion, Rogan referenced the long-debated Epstein client list and what some describe as a Diddy party list, raising questions about whether influential figures might be uneasy about potential disclosures. Names such as Reid Hoffman and Bill Gates were mentioned in a speculative context, not as accusations but as examples of how widespread anxiety could be among elites if hidden records ever emerged. When Rogan directly asked Musk whether Hoffman appeared nervous, Musk's response was brief, just a single word, leaving listeners to draw their own conclusions. That moment, for many, underscored how much of this conversation remains rooted in implication, unanswered questions, and the uncomfortable possibility that far more is known than has ever been openly acknowledged.
These guys, like a Jeffrey Epstein type guy, who works with the elite of the elite clientele. It's all movie stars, big-time politicians, world leaders, scientists, Nobel Prize winners, and they all meet together and have fascinating conversations and cocktails, and there's beautiful girls everywhere. Of course. What a great idea. Right. And if you're naive and you don't understand honeypots.
Here's the quote from Maria Farmer, who was one of the accusers, from what was inside the house in New York.
Okay, she said there were monitors inside this cabinet. I looked on the cameras and I saw toilet, bed, toilet. She said, visibly spooked. Like, I'm never going to use the restroom here and I'm never going to sleep here. You know what I mean? It was very obvious that they were like monitoring private moments. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. Maria Farmer was the one who worked at Epstein's office in New York, I think.
And this was the house, Jamie?
Yeah, I was looking up stuff on the house. That was like what they
I wonder if
found.
the house still has fucking cameras in it somewhere that they haven't found yet.
They definitely, don't know.
Yeah, you'd have to scan the shit out of that house. You'd have to take the walls apart. There's probably listening devices inside the walls. Like, who knows? If this was like really an intelligence operation, yeah, they probably had that house fully wired.
Here's the facilitator model in action. Figures like Epstein and Diddy are often described as having created highly controlled, protected spaces, environments where celebrities, politicians, and powerful figures could gather away from public scrutiny. But according to critics, these weren't just private parties. They were alleged honeypots, places where influence could be observed, leverage could be created, and control could quietly take shape. Joe Rogan once summed it up bluntly: if this wasn't some kind of intelligence-style operation, then it would point to a disturbingly calculated individual who figured out how to compromise powerful people at scale. Phones put away assurances of privacy. Meanwhile, cameras everywhere, everything documented. That led Rogan to ask the question many people are now wrestling with: was Diddy acting alone, or was he operating with someone above him, or did things simply spiral beyond his control? During a conversation with Rogan, Elon Musk brought up Jennifer Lopez, not in a political sense but in terms of proximity and credibility. His point was straightforward but uncomfortable. If someone was deeply connected to Diddy for years, where were the warnings? Where were the red flags? Lopez dated Diddy, attended events, and was part of his inner circle, yet no public warnings ever surfaced. That raises a difficult question. If someone was that close and said nothing, what does that mean? Either they truly didn't know what was happening, which many find hard to believe, or they knew something and stayed silent. And if they stayed silent, was it out of fear, loyalty, self-preservation, or protection of someone higher up the chain? Following federal raids on Diddy's properties, reports claim that authorities seized an enormous volume of footage, far more than a handful of clips. Commentators like Jaguar Wright and Gene Deal have suggested that these recordings weren't just about blackmail but about leverage, a way to keep people compliant without ever needing to make explicit threats. There are now rumors that this material is being quietly transferred or secured, sparking anxiety among powerful figures who fear what might be contained in those recordings. Megyn Kelly has pointed out an unsettling contrast. Despite widely circulated footage showing Diddy assaulting Cassie in a hotel hallway, that incident itself was not central to the charges. To some observers, that raises questions about what else may be considered too sensitive to confront directly. The bigger questions remain unresolved. Who currently controls the footage? What exactly does it contain? And what would happen if recordings surfaced involving major public figures doing things they never intended to be seen? Perhaps the most troubling possibility isn't what's already known, but what may still be hidden. When privacy is enforced, phones are banned, and secrets are quietly exchanged, who actually holds the power? Who controls the narrative? Some viewers believe 50 Cent's documentary included subtle signals during Segments discussing Diddy's party's brief visuals of Bishop T.D. Jakes appeared online. Speculation suggests this may not have been accidental but a quiet message. When Bishop Jakes was later asked directly about the allegations, his response fueled even more debate. Rather than issuing a clear denial, he urged people to keep it moving, then spoke broadly about repentance and forgiveness, adding that he didn't need to repent in this case to critics. That response felt evasive rather than reassuring. Jaguar Wright quickly weighed in, suggesting that if a religious leader